tell me a little bit how you started with music and how you became a professional musician.
Well, it started before Los Angeles. It started when I grew up. My mother took me to the piano teacher as a young boy. I learned how to play. I liked it. So when I was about 13 or 14, I started playing in bands, right, in the neighborhood with my friends. And prior to that, my parents had a basement and they had parties down there. And they had records. And I started listening to, when I was much younger, I started listening to Elvis Presley and things like that. And then then I got really infatuated with the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and Bob Dylan. And then and that was when I was about 12 or 13, and Jimi Hendrix. And I started listening. And then I started playing in bands, and I loved the drums, man. I loved rhythm. I didn't have drums. I was a piano player, right? But I played piano, but I could bang on the drums on these couches we had with the records. Loved that. My father asked me, he said, I said, Dad, can you get me a set of drums? He said, well, I could. He said, but you already play piano. And he says, I can get you one of those compact organs, those Farfisa compact organs. And he said, I can get you a set of drums. He says, but not many. There's all kinds of guys that play drums. He said, but there's not that many that play keyboards. And I thought, and I said, oh. He says, plus you already know how to do that. And I said, well, yeah, you're right. So that's how that happened. I started playing with bands, and I started playing with bands all the time, local bands. And I started playing in nightclubs when I was about 16. I realized I could get paid for it. So somehow in Chicago, they could sneak you in, I could do that. And then, I always loved it. And I wasn't very good. I had a hard time, I guess you call it, I don't know, internally or socially in my teenage years, particularly in high school. And but I could play music, so I could do that. So I capitalized on that, I guess you could say. And then I played in nightclubs all the time through those years. And then but I knew there was something missing in my life, and that I had to develop in myself, because I was not a happy guy, and my relationships were not successful by my standards. Then one day a friend of mine introduced me to Nichiren Buddhism, and I started chanting. That's a whole story in itself. But that woke something up in me. And it woke something up in me and my relationship to other people. And then one day my friend says, and I realized the power of my own life. And my friend says, chant for something really challenging. So I chanted for a recording contract. And that's what everybody wanted at that age. And lo and behold, in 2.5 months, I was I went on to audition with the band, which was in turn signed to Mercury Records. So in about 3 months after that, we had a full-blown contract to move out to Los Angeles. So I moved out to Los Angeles, not knowing, the record company paid our way. And I moved out there, and I was staying out there and rehearsing with the band. And at the SIR Studios, we recorded our album at Wally Heider's on Cahuenga Boulevard, which is a top studio of the day. And I had all these great surroundings around me, right? And it was fabulous.
So the band you're talking about, it's a band Lovecraft?
That's the band called Lovecraft, yes.
Okay, so we were listening to some music of that band right now.
Okay.
That
there's another question that I have. So you were blessed or happy to meet some famous musicians like Herbie Hancock and Wayne Shorter and so. And this is for later videos. I will ask you about how you met these people and how it was to talk to them and everything. But for aspiring musicians, I believe it's an interesting question. Is it important to know famous musician, or is it more important to do your own thing, hoping that someone someday will recognize how good the music is you provide?
Well, my feeling about this, it's a little bit different than both of those. I can be the greatest, myself or you can be the greatest musician in the world, but if nobody hears us and nobody knows us, if we want to do this in the world for other people, nobody's going to see us. So we have to meet people in some way. We have
Yeah,
to work with people in some way. Now, is it important to know famous people? Well, that's an interesting question, because I don't know if it's just about someone's fame, because someone who's famous, they may not necessarily be a generous person. They may not be a nice person. They may not be willing to help nor share anything they know with anybody. So, is it helpful to find somebody who is well known, who is a nice person, who is willing to share what they know with you, is willing to have talk with you? That's great. I think that's very important. I mean, I know that's been a driving force of what I did. I've always tried to find people to learn from. And that's what I was doing with the records, right? That's what you were doing, Rolf, listening to records, because I love the music and I can learn from them. I tried to copy the music. And that's the path of so many people that we call famous today or well known. That's how they started.